A lot of times people just come really selfishly in terms of trying to identify a mentor. And so for me, in any type of mentor relationship, whether it's me searching for a mentor or me mentoring someone else, I come prepared. So like being really clear about what you want, but also in terms of identifying them, seek out people that have qualities that you're interested in. So, be mindful, have those relationships with people on the job and like see what it is that you can gain from them and also be thinking about what you can provide for them.
I'm not afraid to write a brand new story. And when changes find their way to me, I can keep it moving. I'm not afraid to celebrate my glory. And when challenges grace my path, I know I can face another day. Inside, I rise, daring to learn. With Fox After 40.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to Fox After 40. I'm Kim Lewis, CEO and co-founder of CurlMix, and today we're discussing all things women wellness. Now, we have Jil Littlejohn Bostick here with us, here to discuss corporate after 40 and navigating corporate as a Black woman. But before I get into Jill's story, I want to go ahead and read a bit of her background. All right. Jill holds a Bachelor of Arts from Wofford College and a Master's of Business Administration from Webster University. Her career spans corporate and nonprofit sectors with a focus on translating best practices into actionable programs aligned for the business needs. She's committed to inspiring effective teamwork, communication, and collaboration across diverse groups. Jill, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you. So, Jill, tell me your corporate history, background, and the reason I think this is important is because you're going to talk about being a Black woman in corporate and navigating that space of inclusion and all the things. And so I want to know how you got here and what credentialed you to be sitting in this chair. Tell me about being a Black woman in corporate.
Yeah, sure. So, one, thank you for having me here. And I tell people it's been like a winding road, right? I started off in corporate right after college, interned for an organization, worked in finance and accounting for manufacturing facilities. And then I went into public office. So I actually served as an elected official for 11 years, as well as vice mayor. And then during that same time, I led two nonprofit organizations. So I was CEO of the YWCA, I was CEO of the Urban League, and then got recruited back into corporate America, leading inclusion and diversity for a global manufacturing company, and then recruited into the current role that I'm in now.
Jill, I did a little bit of research, but I didn't know you were that much of a badass. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I have so many questions.
Come on.
You've been in service for like 20 years at least before you kind of were in this corporate field. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
There's one, I can't imagine that finance and accounting is easy for a manufacturing company. Having a factory myself, I know how difficult that can be with managing good inventory, work in process, all the raws. That's a challenge. But then going into public office and then working at two nonprofits
At the same time, while I was in public office.
Oh, wow. How does that work? Okay, I have so many questions. And then you're dealing with, I'm sure there's some kind of like racial inequity piece
Absolutely.
all throughout that because manufacturing is not Black.
No.
It just because you typically have to come from some kind of money or have some kind of money to have a manufacturing company, and then running for office. Come on, you know what I mean. And then the nonprofit sector, maybe, but the ones you mentioned, no. So I have so many questions. So walk me through your career path and how you landed in those places.
Yeah. So I actually, you mentioned I went to Wofford. Wofford is a predominantly white institution. And so I received a full scholarship there. But one of the things that they did was try to make sure that they position all of their graduates for success. So I was actually recruited for my first job as an intern. And, in that job, they really taught us how to navigate corporate spaces, right? Like we went through public speaking, we went through etiquette classes. Like nobody talked to me about like eating at a corporate dinner. Like, I'm from inner city Atlanta. Like I had never been, at a formal setting, right? But in that initial phase, they were teaching us how to navigate these spaces because there weren't a lot of us, right? There weren't a lot of Black people in general, nor Black women. And so that really kind of set me up for success. And I've never been afraid to, I call it, the average white man thinks that he can do anything. And I think I can do that times two. right? So I've never been afraid to ask for what I want or share with people what my desires are.
Okay. And so how did you land in manufacturing?
It was the same company. So that company that taught me about etiquette, that taught me about navigating a corporate space, was a manufacturing company. So Milliken and Company is a manufacturing facility. And so I've worked in the actual plant, but I also worked in the corporate space. So you talked about like accounting, like literally talk about being a Black woman in corporate America. I had my first panic attack, right? Because I'm doing inventory and all of a sudden it's $2 million missing.
Ooh,
and
that's material.
I'm like, yeah, that's material, right?
That's material.
Like you could lose your job.
Yes.
And I'm like freaking out, had a panic attack, and it was literally just a slip of a button, and we had to try to figure out where all the dollars were. But those were the types of things that I was doing in my early 20s, right? Like responsible for multi-million-dollar manufacturing facilities and accounting for where the funds were. And so that just really taught me that even though I didn't have a background in it, like all I have to do is have the know-how and the want to make it happen.
And for those of you who don't understand the gravity of $2 million missing in inventory for a manufacturing audit, somebody might go to jail. Like, because you're thinking about why you're doing that audit, right?
Exactly.
And you're a public company. If it's a public company, somebody's head's got to roll. So that's actually really intense to be in your 20s and be like, I'm responsible for that. So I could see the panic attack.
I found it.
Okay, you did.
I did find it.
Were you the only Black girl working there at the time?
So in the corporate, like in the office section, yes, it was a manufacturing facility, so it was plenty of Black people, Hispanic, Asian across on the manufacturing facility, but in the actual office, it was just me. Did
anyone take you under their wing when you got there?
In that particular role, honestly, I would say it was like the secretaries. Like those are the ones that took me under their wing. I literally just got a card last Christmas from one of the EAs, and she was like, "Let me show you how to do this. Let me tell you what's going on," because she was right at the center of what was happening, and she just wrapped her arms around me and made sure that like I always knew what was happening.
That is so beautiful. Do you know why she did that?
I think she was one of few women that were there, and I think I can't answer for her, but I would like to think that she saw something in me that she wanted to nurture.
Do you find a person like that at every job you go to?
Most definitely. I also tell people one of the things that I wish I had like wood to knock on, right? Like knock on wood. I have been really blessed in my entire career. I have never had to apply for a job. So every role that I've had, every step that I've taken, someone was like, "Hey, I think you'd be great for this. This particular company is hiring." And so I understand like that's a privilege and that doesn't happen to everybody, but it's always been people who have been looking out for me, mentoring me, sponsoring me. And so I try to pay that forward. And so whenever I encounter really anybody, but especially Black women, I try to understand what they want, and then I try to be that bridge to help them get there.
How do you recommend finding a mentor on the job? Because essentially, even though it might have been an EA or a secretary, sometimes I think those are the most underrated people because those people know everything top to bottom.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like the EA, my EA is low key COO. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Like they know a lot of stuff. How do you recommend somebody goes about finding a friend on the job that wants to see them win?
So I want to talk about the EA really quickly because here's the thing, talking about navigating corporate America. If you want to be successful in corporate America, you better know the EAs. You better know them. Say Happy Administrative Professionals Day, know what their favorite drink is, send them little notes like that. That is your go-to. So shout out to all the EAs out there.
Shout out. We love a good EA.
But, in terms of finding a mentor, I always tell people there's this misconception, right? Like, I'm looking for a mentor, so I just want to get all these things from them. I want to figure out, I want to take all the knowledge that they have and pour it into myself. And I really feel like a mentor relationship has to be reciprocal. Yeah. So you have to be able to provide things to them as well, whether that's teaching them about TikTok, like whatever it is, right? Like making sure that you're providing value and not to go after it with like, this is what I want to get from you. Like a lot of times people just come really selfishly in terms of trying to identify a mentor. And so for me, in any type of mentor relationship, whether it's me searching for a mentor or me mentoring someone else, I come prepared. Like, here's what I see in you. Like, Kim, I think you are a phenomenal, dynamic businesswoman, and I think I could learn a lot from you. I would love to meet with you on a quarterly basis. Here are the questions that I'd like to ask. I only need 30 minutes of your time. I'll set up the meetings. I'll make it really easy for you. Is this something that you're open to? I've never had anybody say no.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So like being really clear about what you want, but also in terms of identifying them, seek out people that have qualities that you're interested in. So, you know, be mindful, have those relationships with people on the job and like see what it is that you can gain from them and also be thinking about what you can provide for them.
If you've gotten any value from listening to Fox After 40, you learned a beauty tip, you've gotten advice, you've shared the episode with a friend, please do us a favor and leave us a review on Spotify and Apple. It goes a very long way in helping us continue to build the podcast. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next episode. What are some don'ts when you're looking for a mentor? And like, you know, you mentioned the great things to do. It's a great thing to do to come to the way that you said. I would not say no to that request, right?
Right.
But, you know, people, that's not how they approach you when they want mentorship.
Yeah, like literally, like don't come self-entitled. Don't come thinking that you know everything. Don't come, you know, with a chip on your shoulder talking about what this person did and how you're not in the place that you should be because of, you know, Henry, Tom, Dick, and, you know, Jane.
Yeah.
Like, you know, make sure, like, don't come with the negative energy. Like, negative energy is like a vibe kill for anybody. And so often I see people just come in with, like, so many complaints versus, you know, glass half empty versus glass half full.
Now, what made you consider a public career, like a career in public office? Like that was a different like leap to me. I was not expecting that. People don't typically go from manufacturing to like that. So how'd you do that?
Yeah. So
why rather?
Yeah. It wasn't planned. Like I tell people, like I wasn't one of those people in high school, like, you know, I was student body president and, you know, like that was not me. Like,
I don't believe you.
You know, listen, I can tell you, I can assure you that was not me. Like I was definitely, you know, the cheerleader and all that kind of stuff, but not in like public office. Honestly, I didn't even really pay attention to what was happening on the local level. Like it was, you know, it's like, okay, I vote for the president and that's it. Right.
Yeah.
But what really happened is I had a friend who got me involved in then Senator Barack Obama's campaign. And I started volunteering for the campaign. I started sitting on couches with people trying to convince them to vote for Barack Obama. But the questions that they were asking were about their sidewalks, their streets, their police department. They were all questions that the president could not handle. He couldn't do anything about those things. And so I got this curiosity. I've always been the type of person that wants to make a difference. Like I grew up with, you know, my parents had high school educations. They didn't go to college. I was the first to graduate from college. I was the first person to pledge a sorority. I was the first of many.
Yeah.
And so I've always felt this desire to give back. And so as I sat in these living rooms with people, I'm like, man, I got to help them. Like, how can I help them? And the opportunity came to run for office. I was like, I can either win or lose, but I'll never know unless I try.
How long were you in that role?
Wow. So I was in public office for 11 years.
Did you experience any like racial inequity when you were running and or in office?
Yeah, that's an understatement. So, you know, definitely running for office, you know, I experienced all type of discrimination on both sides, honestly. Let me be clear. You know, certainly from, you know, counterparts, you know, like who is she? She's not from here. I'm originally from Atlanta. I was running for office in South Carolina. You know, I got accused of the white people putting me up to running for office to infiltrate the black community. What? I know, right? Craziness. You know, my mom struggled with drug abuse when I was younger. I got accused of being a drug addict. And so I'm like, no, not me. But my mom was, and she's been clean for 15 years, you know, so like those types of things. But people, you know, they like, is she smart enough? She's so young. I was the youngest person on city council. I was one of two black people in general, and there was another black female. And so it was just always, does she know enough? Will she sit in rooms and make decisions that are best for the community? And at every chance I got, I did.
Ooh, okay. Did you ever confront any of these people that would say these things to you?
So a couple of situations. One in particular, one of the things, like when this whole situation came up about my mom, like I didn't run from it. I'm a face-on type person, right?
Yeah.
So instead of just being like, okay, how can we cover this up? Let's get a marketing team. Let's figure out what's happened. I'm like, no, here's what happened. Yes, my mother was an addict from the time I was 5 till I was 15. She's been clean for 15 years, but this makes me who I am. Like, I'm not going to run from it. This makes me stronger. And because of that, I can also help people in the community who may be dealing with similar situations, because this isn't something that I read.
Yeah.
It's something that I've experienced, right? And so I faced that head on, and people are like, oh, okay, we can't use that against her, right? So they went to the next thing. But even in dealing with, the cost of affordable housing has been on the rise for a very long time. And, we would get these developers that would come in the room and, like, oh, she's young. And, okay, so we're going to do some affordable housing. I'm like, okay, can you put it in writing? They're like, oh, well, we're thinking maybe once we get past this stage. I was like, oh, no, I'm not voting for it until it's in writing. And as a result, we were able to help create a fund that now there's an entire organization that's for affordable housing separate from the city funds to help increase affordable housing. And I really think that being in the room and not being afraid to confront that, the majority of people that are underserved who are unhoused, they look like me. And so I want to make sure that we do something to increase their housing stability. And so,
That's beautiful. Yeah. That's really, really beautiful. And so you say you didn't have to apply for a job. So I'm assuming someone saw you in office and was like, she's doing incredible work. I want to bring her back to corporate or nonprofit space, the nonprofit sector. Yeah.
So what I'll say is, like, literally every role I've ever had, I've loved.
Okay.
So I do not subscribe to going to a job and hating getting up for it, right?
Yeah.
Sunday night comes, you're like, oh, Lord, I got to get up on Monday. That I vow, like I saw my parents do that, and I was like, that will never be me. I don't know how it's not going to be me, but that will never be me.
Right.
And so every job that I've had, I absolutely loved. And the past 2 jobs I've had, I cried when I left, right? Like literally, like me and my old boss were like, oh, I'm like, this is my last day. You're like, it crazy, right? Like I'm the one that's leaving, but we're both in there crying because I build deep relationships. I think that's also really important in corporate America, especially for Black women. Like you have to have deep relationships, not just surface level. There's this myth that you just kind of go in, do your job, and you do a good job, and then you leave. Like I go beyond the surface. Like,
wait, how are you doing that, and with who? Because the TikTokers say them people ain't your friends.
Listen, you got friends that ain't your friends, but they still your friends. So
I got some of those, or had some of those.
You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
It's all about how do you not even play the game, but like how do you win? Like I'm winning at life. My goal is to win at life. And so if you go in there with that mindset, then that's gonna happen. And the TikTokers, like I agree, there's probably some TikTokers that are at some really toxic places and really toxic work environments. But again, I've had the privilege and the honor to be able to pick and choose where I go and who I work for and who I work with. So when I'm interviewing a company, I'm interviewing them as much as they're interviewing me. So like I have to make sure like I can show up as my authentic self. And what I like to say is not my whole authentic self, because I listen to trap music and like to twerk. So I can't take that. I can't do that at work, right?
Boundaries. Okay.
So, but like making sure that I'm being myself and that they appreciate that.
So you say you build really deep and authentic connections. You're crying at the end of leaving all the jobs that you've been at, and you really love the people that are there. How are you building these deep relationships with people you work with, where typically depth comes from vulnerability?
It does.
And some kind of revealing some portion of yourself that maybe you don't show to everybody else. Right. But you're working with these people. So it's not like I can tell you like my deepest, darkest secrets or my fears. Maybe I can, but like that might get me sent to HR. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So like, how are you building these connections with people?
So I think it's about building trust, right? Like trust is so important in any relationship. And so a lot of times in corporate, we talk about like psychological safety and what that looks like. And so like, yes, there are barriers that you put up, but one, I always build intentional time. So like, making sure like when I have my one-on-one conversations, like I always start with something just a little personal, like, oh, we went to a comedy show this weekend. What did you do this weekend? Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like trying to figure out, not digging too deep to where it's crossing that barrier, but like showing a little bit of myself, allowing them to show a little bit of themselves. I got married later in life. And so when I go to different events, I bring my husband with me, and I encourage them, to bring their significant other, their partner or spouse with them. And so it's a bit of vulnerability. Like it's a risk, right? It doesn't necessarily work for everyone, but like figuring out that space and that place where you can share a little bit about you, staying focused on like the goals, and then always overproducing, right? Like, I'm always like, all right, here's the goal line. Like, how do I get beyond that goal line? But then, also show a little bit of me.
If you've enjoyed this episode of Fox After 40 and want to get notified about the next episode when it drops, make sure to go to CurlMix.com and sign up for our mailing list. We'll notify you whenever a new episode comes out. Have you ever had a relationship with someone in corporate where it started off bad? It's like, oh, I cannot stand your guts, but I have to work with you. And that you were able to kind of turn that relationship around into some kind of like friendship or meaningful partnership, or like, oh my God, we now hang out. We don't even work together anymore. But like initially I hated them. Like, does that happen for you? Has it happened to you?
No, I had somebody that I did not like, and I still do not like them. But what I will say is I've only had one relationship where I worked with somebody that I did not like. Literally, as soon as you asked that question, like I saw their face, like my body tensed up a little bit, and I was like, ooh, like I tried to get beyond it and past it, and it didn't work. So I also, I brought in other people. Hey, how's your relationship with this person? Maybe you can give me some tips. And everybody's like, no. Yeah.
Do you report that person that you don't like? I guess it depends on what they do.
Yeah, they weren't reportable. Yeah.
Okay, well, that happens. Sometimes, that happens.
But the thing, people knew. Yeah. Like, and so in that situation, I'm no longer at that organization. I'll say that. And so, it's like everybody has to see this. Like, does anybody else not see this? But this person was very good at showing one side of themselves to, the higher ups, and the other side to everybody else.
Ooh, what do they call that? A politician. Mm-hmm. Actually, I had someone like that on my staff a long time ago. There have been a lot of people come and go with CurlMix. Just it happens at a startup. But I remember I had one team member where I loved that person. They were just so great. Oh my God, I'm like they're the best. And then they brought me like little gifts and stuff. They're the best. And then my team was like, no, Kim, they're like that with you. But as soon as you leave the room, it is a scowl, it is a hiss, it is a snarl, and they are difficult, and they are snappy, and they are not nice. It's nasty nice. Like, you just don't know. And so it took me, like, I don't know what happened. Either, like, I think they left, or they quit, like, on the spot or something like that. But I realized, humble, hungry, and smart. And if you have somebody who's hungry and smart, they end up being the politician, and they end up being the one that is great to the higher-ups, but everybody else don't quite see them,
Yes.
Yeah, so that was a huge lesson. Okay, so you went from, how did you land in the nonprofit sector?
So the nonprofit sector was kind of a twist of my professional career. I've always volunteered at nonprofits. So like volunteering and service is really important to me. It's kind of one of my core values is giving back in general. And so I had a colleague, a friend that was on a board, and they were hiring for a CEO, and they called and said, hey, we're hiring for, CEO of the YWCA. I think you should apply. And I'm like, I don't know how to run a nonprofit. Like, what are you talking about? They say, well, that's the thing. We need someone that doesn't have, that has the business mindset, that has the strategy, the skill set, the financial background. Like, that's who we want to come into the organization to help reshape what's going on here. And so I was like, all right, let me throw my name in the ring. And ultimately, I led that organization for 3.5 years before I was then recruited to be the CEO at the Urban League. Same thing. They were going through a transition. They were like, hey, you've done a great job over here. We really need someone to come in and, uphold some of the great work at the Urban League. And I had volunteered at the Urban League for, at that point, I don't know, man, 6-7 years. And so it was a natural fit.
How does the nonprofit sector different from the private sector when it comes to, corporate politics?
Tax status.
tax
That's it.
status.
That's it.
So it's the same.
Yeah, like people feel like, oh, nonprofit is this. I'm like, the difference is nonprofit organizations are still businesses. They're still corporations. There's a tax status difference, right? Like what I will say, and in all seriousness, like most nonprofit organizations, they have like a goal. Like there's a heart connection piece that's tying the work to the organization. That doesn't always happen, in corporate America. So that's a little bit of the difference. But ultimately, there's strategy, there's execution, there's, how you handle your finances, how do you grow the business? How do you continue to market the organization? Those are the same things that, corporations do.
Now, there's typically a difference of like, well, maybe not. I was going to say typically, I thought in the private sector, you have like, oh, that's the big boss, the head honcho. And then like the nonprofit sector is more like flat. And is that not true?
It depends. Okay. So, some nonprofit organizations are very flat and some are very hierarchical. So it just depends on like if you're talking about a nonprofit that has, 10 people that work there, it's probably going to be pretty flat. Both of the organizations that I worked for were multi-million-dollar nonprofit organizations. So there were, we probably had 40, 50 employeys that worked there. Wow. So a little bit different.
Have the black spaces in corporate been different than your white spaces? Have you navigated each and how do they feel different?
I think it depends on the organization. Okay. I think what's always been important for me in corporate America is just like in life, right? Finding my tribe. I always tell people you started this conversation talking about mentors. And so I like to have like a professional mentor, my work person, my personal person, my, religious person, the person that talks to me about marriage. And that same space happens at work, like finding, who can I like just kind of, be myself with and yell and scream and then, get back in the game. And so in those black spaces, I've been really lucky where I've had some amazing, teammates either at my organization or at other organizations, right? And so like I think sometimes depending on what level you are in the organization, you may be the only one. You may be the only, one at your level within that organization. And so how do you begin to build community even outside of your company? So I have, a couple of girlfriends that like I get on a call immediately and I'm like, hey, this is what's going on. I need your advice. What type of things have you guys done over here? And that's been super helpful in terms of like building those black spaces.
Have you ever sought therapy?
Oh, yes.
And when?
All the time, constantly. I have a therapist on retainer.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
When did that start?
Man, I actually started seeing my therapist when my dad died. So my dad died in 2018, and I was a mama's girl and a daddy's girl. So like equally spoiled by both, but losing my father was really hard for me. And so I started working with my therapist in 2018, and again, she's on retainer. And so I have gone through times where I've been meeting with her each week. I've gone through times, I went through a battle of infertility after I got married and navigating that in corporate America and what that looks like. Like without my therapist, it would have been literally impossible to deal with. And then I've done times where it's monthly or quarterly, and now it's just as needed.
What do you mean navigating infertility in corporate America and what that looks like? Can you color that for me?
For sure. So for me, I've always been like driven and focused on my career. So when it came time to, start thinking about what a family could look like for me, it was completely foreign. I had no idea, like I didn't even know what IVF was or what that was about. And so I had to then go back to like, corporate to HR and say like, hey, we're spending funds for IVF, is there a policy? Is there anything that exists for that? And at the time there wasn't. Yeah. And so I had the opportunity at two organizations, my current organization and the one before, to actually build out coverage where it now covers IVF, it covers adoption, we have fertility benefits. And unfortunately at both of those organizations, I didn't get a chance to benefit from them because I had already gone through that space. But your body, like literally, you're putting hormones in your body. You're going through all these different changes, and you still have to show up and be the executive and handle projects. And so during that time, it was really rough. Like my therapist was there, my husband was there, like helping to hold me up while I continued to show up as, Jil Littlejohn Bostick, the executive. Meanwhile, like everything in my personal space was falling apart. But I also, going back to building those relationships, I was able to connect with my boss and connect with a few colleagues, not many, but like say, hey, here's what's happening. And then there began this community around me during that time.
I think that's so beautiful. That's so good. And then walking into a place that didn't have a policy and you being the one to implement it, it's pretty impactful. It's pretty special.
Yeah.
And I remember being pregnant thinking, okay, I have to go to the doctor this many times a week. How am I supposed to keep a job if I was working somewhere else and not CurlMix, So that's, I'm glad you're able to do that for other people. Is there any like parting words you want to leave with women in corporate and as they navigate climbing the ladder, things that you would recommend, or just like one piece of actionable advice that they could kind of take in with them from listening to the podcast?
Yeah. So the main piece, which is what I tell anybody, is to know your worth and add tax. Because I think, Black women in corporate America, like we are magical, we are powerful. We bring an element to organizations that would not exist if we weren't there.
Yeah.
And so often it gets overlooked and we don't have those safe spaces and places that we've talked about. And so, I would say find your tribe, connect with them, lay out your goals and don't be ashamed to go after like the big, hairy, audacious goals, even within corporate America.
I love that, Jill. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram, LinkedIn. You can also find me at Jil with the 1L, Bostick, BOSTICK.com.
Oh, wow. You're phenomenal. Thank you so much for making the trip. I appreciate you. You guys, thank you so much for tuning into Fox After 40. Comment, like, and subscribe. Let us know if you have questions for Jill, any questions you might have for corporate so that we can ask them for any future guests. And thank you so much for listening. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.